Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. And today I'm making a video that I don't want to have to make, and I really hate when these type of things occur. But as you know, there's been a shooting in Uvalde, Texas. I've been through Uvalde. I know many people who live in Uvalde. It's a small town with, very humble but proud people, and it's very terrible to hear when these, crazy acts of evil are carried out. And I know that the citizens in Uvalde are just absolutely grief-stricken, and it's a very terrible thing that's occurred, and I really hate to, wake up and see news like that across the headlines. It's a very terrible thing, and it's just, these senseless acts of evil. I know many people have been asking me to do a video about this particular subject and to discuss some of my thoughts on it, and, we have to be careful. We have to be respectful, all right? We have to be logical. We have to be factual. And all of those things must occur sort of in concert, if you will, when it comes to these types of events. So how do you begin to make sense of it? How do you begin to understand, what could possibly be going through the minds of someone who just lost, their child to a shooter? And this is a terrible thing, tragic thing. And, there's a lot of information that's still coming out about the shooting itself, about the motivations of the shooter, the background of the shooter, the criminal record of the shooter, all of these things, right? So, the first emotion that someone can experience, of course, is going to be anger. You're angry when a terrible act of evil is carried out in your community, because then you start to go through your head and think, well, what could have been done different? Like, what could we have done to prevent this? Were we not, vigilant enough in terms of having, armed people in the schools, having more officers? I mean, there's been a heck of a lot of people that have, mentioned the response of the officers and critiqued the response of the officers. So without getting into details or discussing a lot, because look, over the last few days, the shooting in Uvalde has been completely in the headlines. All the information's out there. So I don't want to parrot all of the same stuff that's being, mentioned across various platforms, right? It's just important to recognize that evil is terrible, and it can show up anywhere. And I think that when we look at the holistic importance of the discussion of how we correct these matters, it's terrible that it ends up being politicized, right? When we look at these 22 lives that were lost, that's a terrible thing. 22 lives, that's a lot of people. That's 22 futures that are not going to be futures for these people. They have no future. That's it. I mean, these are people, these kids, their families love them, right? And they wanted a bright future for their children. And that's a future that's been wiped out. And that's terrible. But the problem is that immediately the mainstream media starts to parrot all this stuff, and they politicize it, and they make it out, like they want to try to infringe on people's rights. And here's the unfortunate balancing act that a guy like me has to sort of perform when it comes to something like this. One is, okay, the people that hate firearms are going to immediately call for stricter gun control. In fact, right now, while the bodies of these poor children were still warm, they already started calling for more gun control. And of course, Chuck Schumer's ringing the bell. Even Mitch McConnell's on board, which I'm going to go over that in a future video. But the problem is that, people would say, well, Eric, you're politicizing this by talking about gun rights in relation to an act of evil. I'm not politicizing it. I'm simply defending my position as a law-abiding, honest, hardworking, patriotic person who loves this country and despises evil, right? So when someone says, well, there's no reason why anybody should be able to get the type of gun that the shooter used in Uvalde, right? And we should pass stricter gun control to prevent people from getting a hold of these things. The issue is, if I say nothing, well, then it's like I'm complicit. Like, I agree with that. So the problem is they push people like me into a corner. They force you to say something about it. They force you to talk about it. And while discourse is important, there's a time and place for discourse. There's a time and place for grieving. Right now is a time to grieve and try to make sense of this tragedy, which there is no sense. It's a senseless act of evil carried out by a person who obviously had very evil intentions in their heart and very, difficult mental status they were dealing with. And of course, more information about all of this stuff is going to come out. in the coming days and weeks as more, investigations are done and everything. But there's been a lot of conflicting information put out about the shooting. So I think the best thing to do is to grieve, is to take a step back and to not, allow yourself to be overcome with emotion, and allowing emotion to take the place of that logical center in your mind that knows what right and wrong is, that knows, what solutions are and what they aren't. And it's very easy for someone to say, well, we're going to blame the tool, not the user of the tool, right? A firearm is an inanimate object that cannot do anything without input from a person. And just because, the person behind that particular firearm was evil, right? If you're in a war and you are, you and your men in the war are armed and the enemy is armed and the enemy kills one of your comrades, do you throw your guns on the ground because the enemy used a firearm? No, you use your firearms and you destroy the enemy. And I think many people in the pro-gun world tend to really view guns as that last line of defense against evil and tyranny and people that would do us harm. There's not a gun owner that I could possibly think of anywhere that would not put themselves immediately in harm's way to eliminate the threat, especially our children. When it comes to someone trying to harm our children, you better believe that the average gun owner would easily put themselves in harm's way to defend an innocent life, of course. I mean, that's what we train for. That's what we carry our firearms for. That's why we have guns, so we can supplement and augment the military, the police, Now, I don't want to get off on a tangent of how the police responded to this particular thing because, again, I don't want to get into that right here. I really just want this to be about, explaining how much I really hate what happened and how terrible and evil that person was who committed this act, and to try to, maybe come up with some solutions, right? I mean, what are the solutions? What could we really do to prevent these types of tragedies from occurring? I listened to Russell Brand. He is a guy that I have a lot of respect for. Russell Brand did a video on this subject where he talked about some of his solutions. And I think that while we might disagree, he was trying to be kind of fair and, of course, pushing for a message of unity just much in the way that I'm doing right now. There are many people who disagree with my lifestyle. There are many people who disagree with me, with the person I am, with, the methods I choose to defend myself, right? We are in a politically divided culture, and that's a scary place, right? Division is not a healthy thing, but as it stands, we are a very divided people in terms of our overall thought process on how we deal with these types of issues, how society should move forward, how society should deal with evil, right? And that's not an easy answer. It's certainly not an answer that I'm going to try to, pretend that I know and try to parrot to you like it's some, sermon or something, right? So, but what are some of the solutions? What can we do? I mean, well, for one, we want to be there for each other, right? I mean, if someone's in need, if they're hurting right now, if you know people in Uvalde who have been affected by this tragedy, reach out, send flowers, tell them you care about them. It's important that we're there for each other, and that I think that we should always try to be kind in everything that we deal with. Even if it's a situation where we may not agree with each other, if you come about it from a place of kindness and not a place of hatred, you're going to get the other person to understand your point of view, right? When we turn on the news, us gun owners, we turn on the news and they call us deplorables and they say that we're in flyover states and they say that we're just clinging to our Bibles and guns, right? Or they say that, we're just rednecks in the middle of nowhere who only care about our guns. I mean, don't get me wrong, it rolls off of our back. We see past that hatred and that bigotry that the mainstream media and even the president has said against people like us. But at the end of the day, if you come from a place with compassion and a true, desire to understand where the other people are coming from in the situation, only through that honest and truthful discourse can you really come up with answers. So, I mean, what would my solutions be? All right, I'll give you my solutions. This is what I would do to prevent these things from occurring, right? I have been saying this for over a decade, right? But I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to lay it out in the most honest and forthcoming way that I can, right? This is not a simple solution, I understand. You don't have an evil radar that you can go, and when an evil person gets by, it goes boop, like a radar, right? You don't get a radar blip when an evil person's near you. So the only way to deal with evil is wherever it decides to show up, you need to be ready, right? When we look at Israel, right, there's all these people across many different facets of this argument, right, that have said, well, this doesn't happen in other parts of the world. Okay, well, look at Israel. Israel has armed teachers, and they very rarely, if at all, have ever had any type of a shooting at their schools because their teachers are trained and armed and prepared to deal with the situation, right? If someone shows up in your classroom to commit some terrible act, right, would you want to be ready right where you are right then, or would you want to have to call and then maybe a half hour later the police come rolling in? I mean, look, here's the thing. The truth of the matter is policing is not perfect. Right. And the situation that we're dealing with is not a perfect situation. I mean, people really do probably wish that they could just snap their fingers and then boom, poof, like a magic trick. Law enforcement officer shows up and they're there with a cape on and a gun and they're ready to protect you at all times. And there's a huge subset of our society who feel that they can just snap their fingers and, oh, well, I don't need to carry a gun because the police will protect me, right? Well, it's not quite that simple, right? I mean, you need to be able to deal with evil where you see it, right? Think about it from the perspective of a teacher, okay? If you were a teacher, don't you want to be able to protect yourself as well? I mean, I think a lot of people tend to forget about the teachers too. There are many teachers here in the U.S. that would love nothing more than to have a firearm and a lockbox in their classroom. Of course, the kids don't have to know about it. And there are many motivated teachers who are very good. Many of them are veterans with combat experience, okay? They would love nothing more than to face a threat that's trying to harm the future of our country, our children, our most precious commodity, something we love more than anything else. We put guards in banks to guard our money. We put guards on Capitol Hill to guard the politicians, right? They have all the protection that they want. They want to pass legislation to take your guns away or to make it harder for you to get firearms, right? But yet they're always going to have their armed security detail, armed with the tools that they don't want you to have, right? They're not just armed with any old regular gun. They have MP5s and MP7s and all kind of machine pistols and full auto goodies and all the things that they don't want you to have. So it's real easy for someone in that situation to say, well, I know what's best for you, little peon nobody. It's easy for them to say that because they're not going to have to deal with the negative ramifications of their decisions, of their actions, of their policy that they're trying to affect. I digress, but the point is there are heart-charging, really, good teachers with combat experience that would love nothing more than to be able to protect their kids in their classrooms, who many of them have a strong bond with. I mean, how many people had teachers coming up through school that you felt was like a member of your family? They were so good to you. So teachers have a bond with their students. You're molding and crafting the minds of these young people, right? Now, without going down the rabbit hole of how I feel the public education system's going, that I don't want the video to be about this. This video is about solutions. I will never deal in rhetoric with you. I will always tell you raw and honest what the solutions are. You can choose to deal with the solutions and implement the solutions, or you can continue down the same path, right? These shootings have been occurring since the 90s, okay? There's been a lot of things. Now, one can argue, yes, there's been a lot of changes in culture. Of course, the home environment for many of these kids has been drastically different and drastically difficult to deal with for young people. Believe me, I grew up in a torn household. I understand what it's like to not have a cohesive family unit. I understand what it's like to show up to school and not have lunch money, right? I understand. I get it, right? This has not been a perfect situation. I get it. But all of the times that these things happen, they want to push for more of the same policies that got them in the very situation that caused it to happen in the first place. So the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And that is what these lawmakers want to do. The real solutions are to stop evil where you see it. And that means having, well-trained and well-armed school resource officers, armed security guards. Now, One of the things that I've mentioned before is about, armed teachers and then having better, resource officers and everything like that. Now, many schools don't allow private security guards to be armed in their, local area, maybe just, due to laws or policies or whatever the case may be. But I think what we should do, there's been a huge impact going on all around the country where, they're voting to fund students and allow state money and federal money to follow students through the financial institution rather than actually supporting the financial institutions directly. The overall thought process is that there's a lot of corruption at the higher levels. All of these school board directors and superintendents and people that are making $150,000, salaries and everything like that. So there's a lot of corruption on how this money gets earmarked, how policy gets put forth and everything like that. So I think the overwhelming consensus in terms of, many places around the country have seen changes in policy where they want to actually fund students more directly, right? Fund students directly, fund schools directly, give the schools the ability to make their own self-defense decisions. Right? There's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution for every school system, right? Some school systems, they might want to do metal detectors and have, school resource officers. Many schools do have that now already, all across the country, right? So that might be a solution for some jurisdictions. Other jurisdictions, they might prefer, maybe if it's a private school or a charter school, maybe they want private security that carries concealed, and they hire those people to conduct their security. But put the tools in place, the knowledge, the training in place, the funds in place to allow these institutions to make their own self-defense decisions. If that means sending the teachers who are willing to air marshal school and sending them to a really good pistol course or two and getting them some great training, right? If it means paying them a little more, if they're willing to accept that responsibility to be the one that's responsible for that firearm in the lockbox and to be responsible if someone, an active shooter situation occurs, right? Pay them a little more money. Give them an incentive. Pay for the class. Pay for their ammunition to train. Subsidize their firearm. You could have an armory at the school, a small, lockbox that maybe only the principal and the designated, teachers have access to, something like that. So there's many, many, many solutions that can, prevent these tragedies from happening in the future, even with guards and even with, school resource officers, armed teachers. I mean, there's many ways that we can have armed personnel on site ready to respond to a tragedy, right? But it's not going to stop evil, right? You could ban all the guns in the world and it would not stop evil. In fact, it would empower evil to do more. They choose these places because they're gun-free zones. Gun-free zones are why they're there. They know that no one will oppose them, or the chance of them being opposed is probably much slimmer than if they were to, try to go to the local gun shop or to any other place where someone's armed, or even a courthouse. All right, how many people go into a courthouse and they've got bailiffs right there, metal detectors, they're armed, they even have their carbines in the lockbox nearby. Our local courthouse does. Why does nobody do these things in a courthouse? Because there's armed people, right? Why does nobody come and mess with me? Because they know I'm armed, right? So evil people will always choose the softest target possible. We have created a situation where we have nothing but soft targets out here, and we have to eliminate gun-free zones, soft targets, and these things will go away. I've been trying to explain this for over a decade. So rather than just to parrot rhetoric that you see on the news or to, come up about this thing with a sky is falling, Chicken Little complex of emotion, right? What are the solutions? I'm telling you the solutions, right? Not every solution is going to be perfect for every single situation or every, person or every jurisdiction or every school district. But we have to make an effort to make sure that our most precious assets are protected every single day, right? We protect our money in the banks. We protect our, courthouses. We protect our politicians. They get armed security and all of this sort of stuff. So we secure everything except the most important thing that very money can't even replace. All right. So I know there's a lot of people grieving in Uvalde. I mean, I know the city of Uvalde very well. I passed through it quite a bit, going out to see my friend Brent out at Ox Ranch and Drive Tanks. And of course, my friend Glenn, who's out there, who's an armor at Drive Tanks. He has a small child. He's grieving. The whole place is grieving. The whole country's grieving. Of course it's terrible when we see these things occur. Nothing will ever replace a lost child. And the last thing a mother or father wants to see is a situation where they have to bury their child. That is the worst thing. That is hell. That is hell on earth to have to bury a child. Absolutely. 110%. But I think society also needs to understand and respect and at least acknowledge the fact, when we look at all the shootings that occur all over the country every single week, all right, of all the people that were lost in Uvalde, and that's very tragic. That amount, if not 2 or 3 times more, are lost in the city of Chicago weekly, right? That's a terrible thing, right? These crimes that are committed, people do these terrible things to each other. These evil people, these leaderless people, these people who have not been taught to value human life. They haven't been given the proper upbringing, to understand how to deal with your problems without using violence. Violence is a last resort, right? It's something that is used in the bag of tricks of discourse, but it's absolutely the last thing, right? Society needs to do a better job of dealing with the underlying reasons that these things are happening, right? People who have very jacked up home environments, who have had a very difficult time mentally with many things. Maybe they have mental health issues or depression issues. So, and there are many situations where a lot of these shooters are known about beforehand and nothing's done about it. So if it means that we got to do a better job of policing, these people a bit, well, then if that's what we need to do, that's what we need to do. But you can't blame the tool, right? You have to eventually understand the social construct and the underlying culture that caused the problem in the first place, right? Look at Chicago. It's a great example. People are killed there every single week. I mean, it's like a bloodbath, a war zone in Chicago. But where are the crocodile tears from all of the, various political pundits for them? Are their lives not important? Right? I mean, it's a difficult thing to talk about. Many people don't want to talk about it, It's a sensitive subject, or, that's you can't talk about that because whatever reason. But if we're going to solve these problems, we have to put good people, with the proper tools in the right situations to deal with these situations where they see them. So, it's a tragic thing. I hate this. I mean, I feel terrible for the people in Uvalde. I feel terrible for the gun community. I feel terrible for the freedom community. I mean, everyone is affected by this, right? Because even us in the gun community, we look at this and we go, did we not spread the message well enough? Did we not tell people to train enough? Did we not push for resource officers and security and armed teachers and programs to make people, better gun owners and more capable gun owners? Did we not do that? The answer is no. We have done that. We've preached for over a decade the importance of all these things. When is society going to listen to us and actually start implementing many of the things that we have talked about over these years, instead of trying the same failed policies over and over again? And again, I hate to bring up policy because this is a time that we should be upset over what's going on. We should grieve for what's going on, right? But the winds that fill the political sails, unfortunately, they politicize it at the first turn. And guys like me, we have to respond to it, because if we don't, silence is compliance. That's their words, not mine. But if I say nothing, no, I have to mention it. Solutions are what we deal with here. And on this channel, we've always cared greatly about the safety and security of everybody who watches our channel. That's why we do so many videos that are geared towards new gun owners. We want people to understand their rights, their responsibilities, right? To understand the dangers of firearms, the pleasurable things about firearms, the memories that firearms can build for you and your family, and the life-saving qualities of firearms. I mean, there are many positive aspects. We cover everything on this channel. This channel is for every gun owner who wants to learn about firearms. And I've tried my best over the last 14 plus years to be what I feel is a positive impact on, being an ambassador to the Second Amendment. I've done my best to do that. And I know it's very easy to blame people like me. And I just hope that people will, understand that, when they look at it logically, that folks like us are really trying to do our best to make a safer society. And I would urge everybody to, understand that these solutions that I'm providing are real solutions. They are solutions that will make an impact, that will make a positive impact, that will save lives. If society will only listen to us and implement these measures on a nationwide level, we can see some progress. But banning firearms and these background checks and all, those are absolutely going to do nothing to stop evil. We are facing evil, and we need the tools to defeat evil at our disposal at all times. And the good people out there need the tools to defend themselves and their communities. So I'll leave you with that. And, my heart goes out to the people in Uvalde. I mean, they're wonderful people. And, all of the interactions I've had with them over the years, they are just the most awesome people in the world. And we really care about you guys. And we want you to be safe and secure and happy. And this terrible, terrible, terrible event hopefully will open up the eyes of people in a way that will allow them to put the proper training and tools in place to prevent these things in the future. And I really want that to occur. I want to eliminate these events from ever happening again, or at least cut them off in such a way that the person who carries out these events winds up with a copious quantity of hot lead inside their body for trying it. So I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you so much for tuning in. I wanted to make this video because many of my viewers are asking me to do it. I'm trying my best to be fair and respectful and to try to be, objective in my views. Those are my solutions. Take it or leave it, but I think that that's what we need to do to fix the problem moving forward. And I hope that everyone finds peace in their heart who's been affected negatively by this, and take that feeling that you have in your heart about what went on and apply it to the solutions. Find the solution, move forward, and use it as a badge of honor, a badge of strength, and take that courage moving forward to prevent these things from happening in the future. Thank you so much. I appreciate you tuning in. Many more videos on the way, and we will see y'all next time. Have a good one.